But I climbed Masada on acid at sunrise.
Okay.
One of the most beautiful experiences ever.
Love it.
As the sun's coming up, I'm reaching the peak of the mountain. I stand up on top of the wall, and I literally felt like the king of the universe. And I remember a very strong feeling of I am awesome. That's the feeling I had. And every ounce of my being felt that I am awesome. And I'll never forget that feeling because I'm always constantly still chasing that feeling. And chasing might have a negative connotation to it, but I think that's a beautiful thing to pursue. Because the truth is I am awesome. So pursuing that awareness and knowledge that I'm awesome. Truth.
Right.
So I'm pursuing truth at the end of the day.
But the LSD let you see that.
The LSD showed me that right in my face. And especially because of the contrast, because of the dark place that I was in, feeling like I'm broken and bad, all of a sudden I feel like I'm awesome and I'm a great guy. And I'm like, wow, this is what I've been looking for. This is it. This is what I need. So of course, like a very good addict, I said, okay, I just need to trip acid every day.
Yeah.
And that's basically what I did for the next 6 years.
That's good logic, bro.
Yeah. I was like, this is doing it.
6 years of that?
6 years straight, I was tripping all the time.
Wow. The following conversation I had with Simba Eckhaus, he is currently working for me, so it was a pleasure to get to know him much better. This was a wonderful conversation where we actually, him and me, both got very, very vulnerable about our past and discussions about what it takes to become someone who decides to devote his life to healing and helping people. He's also a fascinating musician who does really, really inspiring things. I think you'll love his conversations. Just a reminder, I would love it if you like and follow on YouTube and write comments about what you like and what you dislike about the podcast and any future guests you'd love me to have. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome to the Brainstorm podcast. And now, your host, Sonny Perlman.
We're live. Sitting with my boy Simba. All right, we'll do intro later.
Sure.
So, I'm just excited because first of all, first Joe Rogan style cigar podcast.
Nice.
I've been waiting forever.
I don't think Joe Rogan ever had a black and mild, though. So this is a first.
Not many people smoke black and milds, but
I love them.
they, so I don't know if I'm smoking a much better one, but I'm very excited because I've always wanted to do a cigar podcast, and now my podcast studio has a ventilation system, so we can do that. Anyway, okay, so
Nice.
where are we going to start? Just
Start at the beginning.
Start at the beginning? There's so many directions I want to go with you, which is, well, how about this? You're from Lakewood, right?
Correct.
Originally. So I'm trying to think how I want to go about this because I want to hear your story, but I want to hear your philosophies and your journey. How about this? If someone asks you who you are, where do you start? Let's start there.
I'm a big letters guy. We can get into that. You know, the letters of the Torah and words. I love wordplay. I love the letters. I love dissecting words. So let's start. I always like to start with my name. Also, people are always curious how I got the name Simba.
Simba.
That's correct.
Ooh, say it again. No, Mufasa. Sorry.
Remember who you are.
Remember who you are.
That's perhaps the most powerful line in the movie, which I really connect to as well.
Oh, really?
But my full Hebrew name is Binyamin Simcha. So I took the Sim and the Ba, put it together and made Simba.
Did you do that or
I
someone
did
else
that.
did that?
I did it. And
Okay.
all by myself.
Usually rare for someone to give themselves a nickname.
Yeah. So I did it on the plane to Israel, the first time that I ever went to Israel when I was 18 years old. And on the plane, I decided that I'm reinventing myself. And creating a new life. And so if I'm creating a new life, I want to create a new name. Start with the name.
Really?
So that's where Simba was born. And that was a very pivotal moment in my life because leading up to that was kind of the whole beginning of the journey. You know, being born in Lakewood, raised in Lakewood, high school right outside of Lakewood, and then pretty much off the rails for a couple of years. And then off to another country to reinvent myself. And that's where my real journey started of self-discovery and self-expression and ultimately self-actualization, which is where I'm at right now on that journey of actualizing my highest self.
Wow. All right. Well, that's kind of cool. Well, let me ask you a question. The experience you had before you went to Israel, that wasn't about exploring and finding yourself. It was, what would you call that? Like
I would call
I don't
that
know what you call that time period.
I would call that being everything I'm not. So it is part of self-discovery, but that was that part of the journey where I'm finding out who I'm not. You know, doing all the things and being all the versions of myself that I'm definitely not, but I needed to try it to know.
Okay, so let's go back. Truth is, I don't think I've ever had anybody from Lakewood, like the Lakewood community.
Here we go.
Representing Lakewood. You grew up. In a big yeshivish family. It's funny. You work for me. There's a lot of things I'm going to ask you that I don't know.
Great.
I will say the work we do is generally about here and now, like how we feeling now. So it's funny that sometimes I don't know everybody who's working around me like their past, but so I'll get to find out now. So you grew up in a typical yeshivish family out in Lakewood?
Not quite.
Not quite.
My father's a Baal Tshuva. He wasn't raised religious as we say in Lakewood.
Right.
My father wasn't raised he became from when he was a teenager at some point. And my mother was born in Silver Spring, Maryland. So kind of out of town Judaism. And they moved to Lakewood when they got married and raised my family as a Lakewood family, but not the typical yeshivish Lakewood family. You know, we had a TV in the house. We went to baseball games, crazy.
What?
You know, we were worldly. Let's just put it like that. You know, my father is a super cool guy, super funny. He has a lot of different influences from all over his journey, and so my family.
But you're living in middle of regular Lakewood. This you're in Tom's River, Jackson. This is pre that.
This is definitely
this is real
pre-that.
Lakewood,
and it's real Lakewood. The thing is, we weren't in the pits of Lakewood, like 14th Street or 9th Street where the yeshiva is, like that area, which is the north side of the lake. We were on the other side of the lake. That's what they called it. The south side of the lake was more suburbs, working class, more kind of on the modern side of Lakewood.
So the people living around you, first of all, put the mic a little closer to you.
Sure.
But let me just do something here. Capture your pretty face, you know?
This is not in the way of my face?
Now it's better. Well, you can go down a little bit, but
okay.
that bar there was...
awesome.
You know what I'm saying?
You pass me the lighter?
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
So you're on the other side. How different is your family from the families right around you, or they're also not so typical?
Yeah, I mean, my friends, the people that I hung out with after school, or even the people in my school, were kind of on the same boat. Not necessarily coming from Baal Tshuva parents, but modern, more worldly, more modern. Not the typical yeshivish white shirt, black pants, black hat.
Right.
You know?
So you're saying modern as yeshivish modern, not as in modern Orthodox.
Yeah, not modern Orthodox,
right.
But more like cool, whatever you want to
Gotcha.
say. Like open-minded.
All right.
Not your typical, kollel family.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right?
I'm wondering if that affected you as if you go to school and everybody else is different, or was there enough people that were different that it didn't really feel different? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, there was enough people that were different like us that it didn't feel like we're kind of like an outcast family. At the same time, we had neighbors that were ultra yeshivish. One of my neighbors was a Rebbe in the school that I went to. So it was a big mix. But
right.
I didn't feel like I was at a place from in terms of my family, but I did always feel like I don't connect to the yeshivish mindset and lifestyle, even
You
as a
felt that
kid.
since you're young.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right.
The things that we were being taught in school, or the way that Judaism was framed for us, didn't resonate with me even as a kid.
Really?
Yeah, I kind of resonated more with appreciating nature, appreciating Hashem from a point of this world is awesome. And
Even when you were young?
absolutely, and I believe it's because my father raised me like that. That's how my father connected.
Through nature and stuff like that.
Yeah, through like Nifla Sabore. Yeah,
Oh,
that was
wow.
something that my father always used to like point out. Like, look how beautiful the view is. Look how beautiful the ocean is. This is Hashem's creations.
So that connected with
That
you.
connected with me. Everything else of like, you have to learn and you have to all day and it's only this. That was like, I don't see that. I like sports. I like movies. I connected to other parts of life other than just the yeshivish message.
Right. And other people in your family are similar to that, or were you like sticking out in your family?
Definitely not sticking out. My oldest brother, I would say, was the most on the path
Right.
in the family. Probably still is.
No one told him he could go. He could chill out a little.
Yeah, yeah. He was
Yo,
just like,
simmer down, man.
this is what everyone's doing. But I'm 13th youngest of 7. So I had plenty of siblings that were experimenting, were doing other things, and I kind of saw from them, and I saw from older guys in school.
Right.
So I had a little bit more to go off.
So what was school like?
School was one big playground.
Really?
Yeah, I was the kid that gets kicked out of class all the time, but I was the kid who got kicked out who was also really good at understanding the work and doing well on tests.
I had a similar experience when I was a kid. I had a fascinating thing that is hard to explain to people now because it's the first 2 weeks of school. But I would say by the end of the first week or 2 of school, I'd finished all the books that we had. Not only did I finish all my books, I finished all my siblings' books. Because I would just read. I'd read the math books, the science books, the social studies books, the literature books I loved. I would read all the reading of that you had to do, like Lord of the Rings, Lord of the Flies. I remember all these different books. 2 weeks in, I was done. I'm saying it was very.
That's awesome.
It wasn't awesome because then I would just soak up energy in information and learning, and then I was just getting in trouble the rest of the time because I was bored on my face. Now they call this ADHD.
Okay.
I didn't know that was a thing.
So why was it that you why did you soak up all the knowledge? Like, why did you take that approach?
I still do that. It wasn't that. I was like, oh my God, I got new books. I was just excited. I start reading, and then all of a sudden I realized it's 3 a.m. I'm still reading, and I'm going through these books. And I used to have a thing when I was a kid. Let's make this all about me. No, I'm kidding. When I was a kid, we used to have a light outside in the hallway, but we had no night light. So I would sleep by the door, like my head halfway out the door open, and the door out so I could read, and I'd just be up like all night just reading whatever I could. And you've seen all my books. Like I don't want to ever stop reading in general. Like even now, like I love reading. So it was reading and learning, and it was just fascinating to me. But then I was bored out of my face, and really it was tough. And whenever I tried, so the problem was anytime I tried, I got 100, and then I just wouldn't try.
Yeah.
Again, no zeros. Typical test mark was a 0. But then they said, okay, well, if you do really well at the end of the year, we'll let you skip the next grade. And then I just skipped the next grade.
I had a similar thing too.
So I'm saying it's sounding a little similar.
Yeah, I guess it's a certain, in a kid's brain, it's a certain way of doing things. But I was just soaking up knowledge. I wasn't so into reading. I didn't really care too much about like science and social studies and current events. I was more like the math guy. I understood math and numbers very quickly, very easily. It came to me like really quick. So I was the guy that like finished the work for the day and the homework before the school day was over.
Right.
You know, so I would go home and have all the time to just play. But I also had that approach of doing really bad the first half of the year. Teachers would hate me, you know, getting kicked out of class all day. And eventually I would flip the switch and do amazing and be like the most attentive kid in class, asking the right questions, doing all the work. And then I would get like all the benefits, you know, like they would let me skip class. They would let me drink soda in class.
We're not similar in that sense.
Oh,
I
it
always
sounded
try to
like-
do good in the beginning, and then the rest of the year was terrible.
Okay, so I was the opposite.
I was constantly getting expelled and suspended, and it was a disaster.
I think my way is better because you
I
start
like
with
your way.
you start with low expectations and then you shoot past them.
No, everybody, they were really frustrated with me because it was like everybody knew I was smart, and they just didn't know, and my parents were both smart, and everybody in my family was smart. Like, it was a very smart, and then like they were like, okay, let's go, and then I would just, it wouldn't just peter out, it would just turn off. And then I get in trouble because I'd be reading other books in class. I was a lot of reading and writing. I would draw a lot, and then I would read a lot. That's all
Nice.
I did. So I actually, want to hear a great story?
Sure,
Then we'll
go
get
ahead.
back to you. But this great story, you reminded me of my childhood. I get called in from recess. And my mother's there. I'm like freaking out. It's 4th grade. My mother's there, and I get called in, and they have my Chumash open, and I drew all over the page. You know, like every single inch of it is like drawn in, like designs and stuff like that. And they like look like terrified, like their face looked like something died. Like, oh my God. And I'm freaking out. I come in, I'm like, I'm so sorry. I know I'm not allowed to draw in the Chumash. And like, they called me in special. And like, I was like, I'm sorry. I didn't mean. And what ended up happening is that I had discovered a design, which I just kept doing. You know, you discovered like a doodle when you're a kid. You just keep doing it and doing it. And it was a swastika. I just had no idea what a swastika was. So I had 3 pages in the Chumash of swastikas.
Oh my God.
If you go back, the rest was like flowers would be the next one, and you know, like I didn't no idea what a swastika looked like. I was like a neo-Nazi.
I could see why that would be concerning for your parents and teachers.
Oh my God!
Like, what's he reading and what's he into?
It was crazy. Anyway, okay, so it doesn't sound like school was that bad.
Like I said, it was a playground. I had a
playground.
blast. Everything was an opportunity for me to have fun. And even when I decided to do well in school, that was fun too. I wanted to see how well I could do on the test. How many people in the class can I teach the work to? You know, I was also getting a lot of assignments. That was a big thing in my school. If you make trouble, you got to write like 7 pages of the book that you're reading. I would do that so quickly that I was writing other people's assignments for money. And they would give me snacks and money to write their assignments during recess. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll bang them out. Still have time to go play.
Oh, nice. Okay,
Yeah, so
it's very lucrative.
yeah, I had a business mind from a young age too.
Yeah, that's cool.
But I was similar also in the way of drawing. I was a big doodler. I still am an artist. You know, I like to draw. I like to paint. I'm also a drummer, so drumming was always, I was drumming on my desk.
Even when you were a kid?
Yeah.
When did you start drumming?
I started drumming at like 4 or 5 years old.
Really?
Yeah.
Did they get you a drum set?
There's a video of me in my mom's kitchen banging on the pots and pans with like wooden spoons or something, because I saw it in the city one time. And I was like, all right, I can do that. And my father saw it and he's like, we got to get this kid a set. So it's actually funny, similar story. My father calls me in one day after school and he's like, come upstairs. And I thought I was going to get in trouble. I was like, oh no, what'd I do? And we go upstairs and I'm ready for like a smack or something. We go to the back room in the attic and there's a drum set sitting there for me. My father's like, I got you this.
Ah.
Yeah. Best thing my father ever. Actually, I don't know if it's the best thing. My father does awesome things all the time. But that was something really, a good eye on his part. You know, he caught that I was into it and he fed it. And I never looked back from there.
Wow.
Yeah, that was my first drum set. And not long after, I got a better drum set from a friend. And my best friend growing up was also a drummer. So we used to trade notes and challenge each other. Like, look what I learned. Can you do that? You know? So school for me was drumming, sports, doodling, math, and getting kicked out.
So what was getting kicked out about?
Oh, I was making jokes, passing notes, making noise, disturbing.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, but they would kick you out. But did like the rabbis and stuff like you, or
Not at all.
Not at all. Okay.
No, I mean they liked me because I was smart, and when I was into it, I was a good student. You know,
Right.
all teachers like a good student because they, you know, that's why they're teachers. They want to teach to a good student, you know, that feels like they're doing their job well. So when I was a good student, they liked me, but I was just too hard to handle when I was making noise and making jokes. So they're just like, go outside and play. You know, I
Okay.
used to go into the base measures of the school and do like cartwheels and practice gymnastics. That was like most of my school day.
So, I mean, when you describe it, it doesn't sound. I mean, I'm not trying to make your childhood bad. It sounds pretty nice. What happened that you took a turn? Like, what was the taking a turn?
So I
I
actually
want to get into the healing part, but I'm saying I just
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah, sure. So I had an amazing childhood from beginning to end. Like I said, my father's awesome. My mother's the sweetest lady ever. Great family, great friends. As a matter of fact, that friend that I was talking about, who I grew up with, and we had drumming in common. We had a lot of things in common. We were like brothers. So I used to go to his house every Shabbos. He wasn't in my school, so I would go to him on Shabbos, and we would hang out, play, you know, do our thing. And at some point, he would go into his father's office to learn on Shabbos. And during that hour, I would just roam around the house, play with his younger brother, play with his toys, whatever. One week, I was waiting in his room to come back, and his older brother came into the room. And basically, one thing led to the next, and my pants were down, and he was touching me inappropriately.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. And that was a pretty intense experience, as you could imagine.
Yeah.
And it didn't end there. That actually ended up happening every week. And every week it would kind of get more and more intense. And I would freeze and shake and not sure what's happening. And I was scared because he's older and bigger. And also I'm thinking maybe this is what older kids do,
Right.
you know? And that happened. That was going on for like multiple years.
Really.
Yeah.
And you never told anybody?
I never told anyone because he told me that if I tell anyone, we're going to get in big trouble. So we can't tell anyone. And I thought he was kind of teaching me, you know. He was like teaching me like, okay, this is what older people do.
Really?
So I was just kind of like learning. Yeah.
That's terrible. I'm sorry. But that you're saying that was like you're middle of having this charming childhood and this chaos is happening and you're not sharing it with anybody.
Correct.
You don't even know if it's wrong or right, or I mean, did you know it was wrong? Like, did you know something wrong was happening, or you felt something wrong? Like,
yeah, I felt something was wrong, and the fact that we're hiding it, and the fact that he's telling me that we're going to get in big trouble, the message I got is that I'm doing something bad, and the message was that I'm bad. You know, I'm a bad kid.
oh,
You
wow.
know, I'm a troublemaker. I'm bad. I break the rules. I do secretive stuff. And so that started to play out in other areas as well. I kind of became like the class bully at some point. It was a big like political split in my class in 7th and 8th grade. And it was like me against the kid. And then everyone else was like, whose side are you on?
Right.
And so I was on the winning side. And that just meant that I was being meaner,
Right.
unfortunately.
Eesh.
Yeah, it's something that I regret or I'm not proud of.
Right.
And I've done work on forgiving myself for all of this. So, you know, it's okay. But
It's okay.
yeah,
Okay.
It's all
but
okay.
As a kid, it's super intense what's happening.
yes, exactly. And so I started to create this identity or believe this about myself, that I am a bad kid. I'm bad.
Right.
Yeah.
And that starts affecting every part of your life.
Of course,
Jeez.
identity affects everything. I believe that identity is the core of any decision a person makes. Comes from how they identify, whether it's consciously or unconsciously.
Okay, let's get into that for 1 second.
Sure.
We could go. I don't know if we have to go. We don't have to go chronologically. So, could you explain that a little bit more? Because, I mean, for when you say a statement like that, it makes me think that if I could change how I identify, I change as a human being. Like, I'm done. Like, if I could change who I think I am, if identity is everything, does that mean that if somehow I started identifying as someone else, if I could magically do that, then I'm just a different person?
Well, it's a slow process. Things will eventually develop, but think about it like this. You plant a seed in the ground, right? Depending on what that seed is going to be the tree that grows. So if you plant an orange seed, an orange tree will grow. If you plant an apple seed, an apple tree will grow. I believe your identity is the seed of your being. So how a person identifies that will create roots, and then all the nourishment and everything that a person takes in will feed that identity, and then that will eventually express itself as how they dress, who they hang out with, who they talk to, how they talk, and how they live their life.
Yeah.
So
I will say that it sounds depressing. I'm just gonna. There's a good side to it, but I'm saying there's an inevitability that is like, oh, I identify as this, so everything that comes my way is identifying as this. I'll tell you, in my own life, I think that I have so many different identities going on at once that makes one identity. But the idea that I keep doing the same stuff and thinking the same way because I'm just feeding this original seed like you're talking about. It seems. Tell me why that's good. How about that? Because I'm just thinking now, like, oh wow, that's sad.
Interesting. I never thought about it like that.
I don't want to be trapped by this identity thing.
Well,
does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And when it comes to identity,
where do you get this from, by the way? You get this from somewhere?
I get this from my own experience.
Okay, gotcha.
This is something I discovered for myself. And this next point will illustrate why and how I discovered this. We're talking about core beliefs here, right? Your identity is like, I am blank. If you could say one word, I am blank. Not like I'm a father.
In psychology, they call it schemas.
Yeah?
I just love that word.
Cool.
Sorry, go on.
I learned also at some point on my journey, I learned about paradigms.
Okay.
Right? A paradigm is kind of like the filter through which you see the world.
Right.
But that's even a layer above the identity. I think identity is more core than paradigm. So a paradigm shift could be great. People talk about if you have a paradigm shift, everything's going to change.
It could be kind of surface. That's what you're saying.
It's more surface than identity. So if a person, to answer your question before,
paradigm?
paradigm is basically a way of looking at the world. So let's say if I look at the world through a paradigm of art, right? If I identify as an artist, or if I am an artist, I love art. So everything I look at will show up in a way that's artistic. Like I'll be looking at things, oh, that's a nice shape. Oh, I like the color of that tree. That flower next to that flower is a nice contrast, right? Now, somebody who's looking through at the world through a paradigm of music, let's say a musician,
right?
Now everything they see kind of is musical. Like a train passes by, it has a rhythm, and they hear a bird chirping.
Are you saying a paradigm is the lens through which we see everything?
Yeah.
And the core beliefs is the eyes.
The core belief is the eye.
Is the eye.
There you go.
And then the lens is the paradigm.
Correct.
I never heard it explained like that, but the way you're explaining it, I'm like visualizing that.
Yeah.
I gotcha. I have a fascinating thing with a paradigm shift where I sometimes drive down my driveway. I work in Brooklyn at night, not so much anymore, but when I do, I get back around 1 a.m.
Okay.
I drive down my driveway, and my house is down. So I drive down. I see my whole house, see the lawn, see right the other cars, and some days I drive in, and I'm like, oh my God, I gotta pay this mortgage, and these freaking lawn is messy. I can take up the garbage. These cars, every car has a problem. I gotta do registration on that one. I gotta do this. My kids are all driving me crazy. Like, it's so much. I need $1 million zillion to survive, and and the next night, I'll drive down the same driveway, and I'll be like, holy cow. I have a house. I have a lawn. that's so big that things on it is not even like I don't even have to clean it really. Like it's so big and awesome. And I have cars and I have a wife and kids and like, holy crap, how did I ever get such an amazing life? And to me, that's like I don't even control it. I'm just driving down my driveway and it's whatever my lens is on that day, it's 100% different, meaning nothing changed.
There you
It's
go.
not like it was a better anything. It was exactly the same scene, different paradigm.
And
That's what you're saying.
There you go. And what's the difference in your emotions that day?
Well, that's the funny thing is that I don't know if it's emotions that day or at the exact moment I'm driving down that driveway. Because I've had a bad day, all of a sudden drove down the driveway, I'm like, whew, life is amazing. I've had a good day, drove down, I'm like, wow, see, life is amazing. I don't know. It's like that book Blink. It's like in 1 second, you just boom. This experience happens. It's not always the emotions of the day that are controlling that, but I'm very aware that I almost laugh at myself from both sides. I laugh at both sides.
Yeah, because it's crazy how different the same thing could be
Yeah.
depending on the lens you're seeing it through, the paradigm.
So you have Shlomo Melech had this ring, right? I'm
Yeah.
sure you love this ring.
I
You know
love
about his
Shlomo
ring?
Melech.
Shlomo Melech's ring. What does it say on it? You remember?
Gamze Yavor.
Gamze Yavor, right? So I always read that as like bad times are gonna pass. It doesn't say that.
Yeah, it just says this.
This will pass.
Yeah.
And like to me, and I'm going off topic a little bit. To me, that always meant like understanding that we're living in a river that's flowing. Like good will pass, bad will pass. If you don't stop and like enjoy this right now, it's going. The bad is going. The good is going. You're kvetching about your kid being really difficult as a child and you have to do the diapers and that's passing. And when that passes, there'll be kind of a death of that moment. Like it will pass away, you know?
Yeah.
But there was such a beauty when I realized that it meant everything. It wasn't just the good, just the bad is going to pass. Like it's not just an encouragement. It's an understanding of the entire universe that it just passes.
Correct.
Anyway, so that's the paradigm.
Yeah,
thing.
and that's the paradigm thing. And on that, we can say what's even deeper behind that piece of wisdom right there of Shlomo Melech is the understanding that this too will pass, right? But there's certain things that are constantly unchanging, that will always be the same. So back to the analogy you gave of you said that your eyes are the filter or a screen or something like that.
Well, the eyes are like the schema, and then the lens.
The lens. So I like to see the universe and reality as a TV or a movie being projected onto a screen.
Okay.
Okay. So the light, right? Every projector starts with a light bulb. The light bulb is your soul. Your identity is the screen, the lens, or the glass, right? Your identity is like the glass that amplifies whatever the light.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Then is the film, which is the content, the picture,
Okay.
the lens, the paradigm. Okay, so we got light bulb, soul, glass, identity. Then we got film, which is picture. And then the screen itself, the image, that's your life. Everything that you have in your life, okay?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's all a result. It all goes back. You know what I mean? And we could even go further back. What's behind the light bulb? Electricity, that's God. Okay, that's the source of energy.
That you plug. You plug in.
You plug in. So now, with that understanding, your soul is pure light. That's ever unchanging. So I believe that Shlomo Melech was actually talking to that even deeper than just this too will pass. Like, don't dwell on this because it'll pass. But he's also pointing to something that never changes, which is your soul. And when you identify with that and you connect with that, nothing can overwhelm you because that will always pass, but you'll always be this light.
Right.
Now, the glass is where I like to put the focus, pun
You're saying
intended.
this will pass, but I don't pass.
I don't pass. I stay the same. I'm always
Ooh.
plugged into God. Now, the problem for most people and the problem for me on my journey was the glass. The glass got scratched, whatever you want to call it, broken. But
So your
at some
identity became this bad kid, troublemaker, bully, kind of like doing secretive,
exactly.
shameful, like that. That became your identity.
That became my identity, and then that started to color what became onto the screen. And everything in my life started to show up as troublemaking, bad decisions, basically.
Right.
Okay? And all these bad decisions led me to, in high school, having more experiences with sexual abuse, one after the next, different people, different ages, and drinking and skipping school, getting kicked out of high schools. I went to 3 different high schools, got kicked out of all of them. And eventually, when I started to process what happened to me as a kid and all through high school, I started to develop a identity that I am broken. So now it went from bad to broken. And broken, I would say broken is more painful than bad.
Yeah.
Because now
Bad, you can switch.
Yeah. Wait, what do you say? Bad, you
Bad,
can switch.
you can switch.
Bad, you can switch. Broken, you
Broken,
can't. Exactly. Very good
broken.
point. Yeah.
Wow.
And so now all of my life starts to show up as broken. And when I looked at my future, I saw a broken future. And when I looked at my past, I looked at a broken past. And when I looked at myself, I saw a broken self. And so the only thing you could do to a broken self is try to heal it. And the only way I knew how was through drugs.
Right.
So that's when I turned to drugs, and that's when I got heavily, deeply addicted into everything I touched got my hands on.
Which it's one of those lines in the 12 steps that I absolutely love, which is, I don't know if it's a line in 12 steps, but that addiction is the solution. It's not the problem.
Correct.
So your problem was you were broken, or you're feeling broken.
That's right.
Or thinking of yourself as broken. Eh?
Yes.
I'm getting
You're
it.
getting it.
And then you have the solution. Here's a question. As now you're an adult, and I'm an adult. I've been an adult for several years now, at least faking it. And in your experience, there were adults coming in and out of this. Let's take your high school years, which are probably the most tumultuous of your life. No? Would you say that got a little crazier later, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think high school was the most chaotic part.
Like chaotic, right?
Internally and externally.
So, first of all, I want to say something. This is really intense stuff, but it's really fun to have a cigar and do a podcast. I will just say it's like,
It is. I'm thoroughly
it's a
enjoying
whole
it.
nother chill. No, normally I don't do a cigar and a podcast, but I totally get why they do cigars and podcasts.
Yeah.
It immediately has like another
It's awesome.
vibe.
Yeah, it's awesome. We're chilling.
Okay,
But I
totally
do
chilling.
want to say on
Yeah.
what you just said that this is pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah,
And I want you to know and everyone to know who's listening
yeah.
that I'm totally okay. Thank God. I'm in a very good place. And I actually like to pride myself in being able to talk about heavy things in a light way.
Okay.
It doesn't need to be heavy. This is not a pity party or me complaining or being a victim or saying that life sucks. You know what I mean? I'm saying that I went through some hard stuff and it's okay. And there's a way to talk about heavy things in a light way.
Right. Which I appreciate a lot.
And the cigar helps.
And the cigar helps. Well, I would say this, and this is very important. A lot of people have asked me a podcast, like, why don't you working with addicts all day long? Get some addicts on. Let's talk about it. Right?
Yeah.
And the truth is I've been incredibly, incredibly careful to not get people on because I don't know how strong they are. So I would say you should know from the get-go that I know you and I trust that you're good enough to talk about this. That's what I'm saying. It's a compliment just to have you on because I wouldn't do it if I thought this would break you. Like you are one of the most upbeat, positive, awesome people who has worked on himself tons. I know that. Not everybody else knows that. But I never would have you on the podcast if I thought this would be traumatic for you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So that's important. Like, and I've gotten I think it would be very sexy to have on like people who are real broken on the podcast, because then everybody would get to kind of like, it'd be like a little voyeur type of experience. Like, how could I like see in and like what their experience is? And I get it. And we all watch shows like that. And, you know, although I hate like addiction shows, I'm not going to lie. They just make me really sad. I don't, I'm like, I see this all day and I got to, like, I'm trying to chill out on a movie and I'm watching like an addiction movie. Like, okay, let's do something else. Anyway, so the question I had as the adult and as the person who's working with guys like this, in your own personal experience, could you remember instances or experiences that were both good and bad that adults have done through your experience? Meaning, I'm coming as an adult. You're this little Simcha, who, you know, before you were Simba, like before you reinvented, and you're the little Simcha, which everybody knows you're full of joy, but meanwhile, it's obvious that you're broken or you're feeling broken. I mean, as an adult, I would have looked at you, at least with my experience, and be like, wow, this is, everybody else might think he's having a good time, but he ain't having a good time. He's trying to fix something real broken. So I'm looking in, and now I have the opportunity of talking to someone with his own experience. Where would you say, if you could remember, times, experiences where an adult did the right thing or the wrong thing? You hear the question?
I hear the question.
Yeah. If you're comfortable talking about it, but it's interesting. Like,
I mean, there's plenty of examples of adults doing the wrong thing.
It's not a blame game. I'm trying.
You're saying
we're trying to learn here.
Is the question in that they did the wrong thing in trying to help me, or just in general, just seeing adults do the wrong thing?
You're right. So you're going, like, all the time, adults are coming over to me and they'll be like, okay, this kid's struggling, or my kid's struggling, and what should I do?
Yeah.
There are things I say, don't do that, and there are things I say, do that. So, you know, what were some of the things a parent? So sometimes people could come in trying to help with all good intentions and do terrible things.
Yeah.
And sometimes people are not trying to help and they still do terrible things, or the opposite. You know what I'm saying? I'm just curious in your own experience.
Yeah, I'll give you two examples.
Yeah.
I think these are kind of like opposite sides of the same spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
I never told anyone about what was going on with me. And if anyone ever asked me, I'm like, yeah, everything's fine. I'm good. Really deep down, I'm broken, right? First of all, it was a level of denial because I wasn't really sure why I'm broken. I wasn't conscious of like what is causing this, but it's just happening. But my mother was kind of the overreactive type, in my eyes at least. You know, even like small things that happen, she would get very concerned. So like with this kind of thing, like I felt like she would blow it out of proportion. You know, so I didn't want to tell her because she was overreactive in my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, if I would say like adults doing the wrong thing, like any kid who sees an adult being overreactive is going to be scared to tell them anything vulnerable or intense because of how they're going to react. The other side of the spectrum was when I was...
like showing a kid that you're calm and you're in a safe place may be a way to draw you out, in a sense. Like,
exactly. When a kid gets the message that it's okay, whatever you tell me is okay, I'm not going to freak out, we're going to figure it out together, I could handle it, and I'll help you handle it.
Right.
That will help a kid be able to tell you anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty beautiful advice.
Okay.
Yeah. Go on.
Number two, when I was in, on the other side of the spectrum, when I was in Waterbury, Rabbi Kalish was kind of the first person that I saw, first adult that I saw that was like in a good place. You know, like he figured it out in a way. All the other adults also, so people ask me, or you might ask me, why didn't you tell anyone else? Okay, so your mother was overreacting, why didn't you take anyone else's advice or ask anyone else for help? In my eyes, nobody really had it together. So I'm like, I'm not going to ask him. He's on his own trip of dysfunction, you know? Like, how could he help me? He's struggling with his own thing. Rabbi Kalish seemed to be a person who got it figured out. He was...
Why'd you think that as a kid? Yeah, I'm curious.
Well, at this point, I was like 16, 17 years old.
Yeah.
Everyone likes him.
Okay.
He likes himself. He's confident. He's kind. And he talked to me like a peer. You know, he talked to me like respect, not like an inferior, not like he's my Rebbe and I'm like a young little pisher. He talked to me like a person.
Right.
And I saw that as a sign of respect and a sign of like he's got it together. Like he figured something out. He's in a good place in life. So that's also another great thing for adults to do for kids is to just be in a good place yourself. Lead by example.
It's almost the same thing on the other side.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I said.
Right. It's like the flip side of the coin. It's interesting. When I was a kid, it took me a really long time. Like I was suspicious, and I think I still am. I shouldn't say I'm suspicious. I always thought no one had it together. Like if anybody looked like they had it together, they were just acting like they had it together.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I always thought. And I will tell you that I still feel that way. But I'm all right with it. Meaning, I think that's together. Not being all right is fine. What I was like picturing in my head is like, where's that perfect person with that perfect rock that could hold me because it won't break and give me unconditional love, and realizing that everybody's got a little baby living inside doing funny things, and you know, like you could evolve to very high levels, but you get rid of your Yetzirah, you're not a human anymore.
Correct.
Like, who are you? So it didn't really shift the thoughts. It's funny, when I think, like, I'm like, oh my God, I'm thinking the same way I did when I was like 9 years old, which is good. I guess I was a smart 9-year-old. It's fine. I just don't see it the same way because I'm like, cool. And even with you guys, every once in a while, I'm like, I'm working as your boss, right? And I don't know. I feel like I have to show you my weaknesses. Like I want to be authentic in the experience. And I watch sometimes employees of mine, specifically employees and guys that I work with, get like very shocked. They're like, this guy, really, he's got a good family. He's got a good life. He's got, what? And he's telling me he's like depressed for the last week. Like, what is happening? Like, isn't there a place we get to that is perfect? Like, can't we get there? And for some reason, I feel it's my mission in life to dispel that myth. Like, it's never that. And if it got there, who wants that? That's not it.
Yeah.
The struggle is it. The living life. There's difficulties, there's good. We don't love it at the time, but we look back, the best parts of our life were when we got through struggles. So if it just ended, what happens?
Beautiful.
Anyway,
beautiful. And I want to tell you, by the way, that the reason why I decided to work for you and join the village.
Ooh, let's hear.
I don't know if I ever told you this.
First of all, Simba works for me.
Yeah.
We didn't say.
Proudly.
Yes.
It's been a
he's
pleasure.
managing my house, the main house, and he's amazing.
Thank you.
All right.
So why did I decide to work for you? Rabbi Kalish called me. It was after he came to the grand opening for the Usher Goldman house.
Right.
That
So
was
beautiful.
right, and someone probably told him to call me and convince me to go.
Think so?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think it was Ellie.
Probably.
Good move, but I love Rabbi Kalish. I think he's an awesome dude, and I respect what he says. He called me and he told me he heard I'm considering working there. He told me he just thinks it's a great place and it would be very good for me. And he said he met you, and the one thing he told me about you, he's like, Sonny's very human. And that stood out to me because my goal is to be human. You know, and I would say my whole struggle and addiction was struggling with being human. So when I heard that he's a very human guy, I was like, all right, I'll work for a human.
That's a great compliment.
Yeah, man.
Make that a clip. I'm really human. No, it's funny. We have that song that every time someone says human, what song goes to your head? I'm only human. You're probably singing a lot better, but
I think we were both off tune there, but yeah. I'll stick to drumming.
I hate that. I hate those words. What's better than being a human?
Yeah. But I think the message of that song is saying don't expect too much from me. I'm only human. And I think that's what you're doing when you do that. That's what I always thought. When you share about, you're depressed and you're struggling, which is a beautiful thing that you're able to do that in front of not only your employees, but the guys who look up to you as their fearless leader, right?
Right.
But I also saw it as a way of you saying, like, don't expect too much from me. You know, I'm a human guy. I make mistakes. I struggle too. Like, don't think I'm going to come in and, like, you know, be like Superman.
I will not be your savior.
Yeah. You're not being nobody's savior. You're a human just like all of us. And that's a really good message.
I think
And
it's
then
a good message.
you lead by example. It's cool.
But okay, so I will say, first of all, I love this. It's a lot of fun. It's like total ego boost. Rabbi Kalish, the holy Rabbi Kalish, said that I'm human. I love it. No, what I want to say is that. Nah, I forgot what I want to say.
All right, so I'll tell you what I want to say.
Forget it. Okay, go on.
One of my
Oh no! I do remember.
Okay.
Sorry.
And then
when I
remind
think
me to say-
about like the Avos, like, you know,
Yeah.
our forefathers, we're always trying to like whitewash it and make it like, oh my God, Amravina was like the tzaddik, and he was like the holiest of the holy, and everything he did was perfect and all. But the Torah doesn't say that. The Torah talks about all the things they did wrong, you know, and it's constantly talking about the things they do wrong. And I think the message people get is like, okay, let's quickly fix it and make it that it wasn't wrong. I see it as that's not great. My thing is, and this is a little bit different from what you're saying, is that the reason they were great is that they were human, like us, and they did great things. Meaning you could expect enormous amount from them. But it's not because they're perfect. If I did everything great, I did great things, but it was because like it's just hardwired into me. I don't even have a Yetzer Hara. I don't have anything that's stopping me. I'm just an angel. Like, big deal. No one's praising like Angel Gabriel, like, thank God he's here. He really worked on himself. No, he's perfect from beginning to end. He didn't work on himself. He's holy. You know, don't mess with him. But it's not coming from this guy's a giant. So like when I look at like our forefathers, I'm like, that guy got sad and he still started a nation as like an amazing person. I'm like, that I could look up to. When I look at someone like Rabbi Kalish or rabbis that I've had, and I'm like, that guy has a marriage. That guy has kids that have given a run for his money. That guy has had thoughts in his head that he wished would go out of his head. That guy had struggles and he went and built a legacy of healing for the world. Like, to me, it's like, that's human.
Yeah.
Like, so it's a little bit like, don't expect so much. You could expect, but don't make me into something I'm not.
Yeah.
Because that isn't even great in my eyes. I don't like it. I'm not even excited about being the guru that you want me to be. I actually don't. I'd rather not be up on that pedestal. It's kind of scary up there, and I can't do anything with it.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's kind of the thought. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And what you just made me think of is the story of David and Bathsheba. And in that story, probably most people know what happened, but I heard that Chazal said that anyone who says that David...
Leonard Cohen talks about it.
Yeah?
Saw her bathing on the roof.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
There you go. And he said, hallelujah.
That's the next verse. Saw her bathing on the roof. Hallelujah. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, so the Chazal say that anyone who says that David did something wrong there is mistaken.
Right.
And so most people think that means like, oh, what he did wasn't really wrong.
Besides Nas and Anavi, you said you did something wrong.
Yeah.
Go on, I'm sorry.
I didn't know that.
That's the next part of the story.
So Chazal said he was mistaken. But the point is, you're not mistaken because what he did was really right. Maybe in his calculation, it was okay, but you're mistaken because you're looking at the wrong point. The point is that David also was human. And that story shows us that he was human, and he still was who he was.
Right.
That's the message you should take from the story.
Yeah.
Now, my
to
message...
me, David HaMelech is the bomb.
Yeah, he's awesome.
That guy has made a million mistakes. He fought everything. He's demons in his head. He was like, not as cool as Shaul. I like Shaul even better.
Really?
Don't even tell anybody.
I'm a Shlomo and David guy.
Shlomo David guy.
I mean, David's an OG musician. He was the first rapper in the Bible.
Can I tell you my favorite thing about Shlomo? That when he died, they were like, we didn't like him. That's what they tell his son. They're like, nobody likes your father. They're just behaving because he's so powerful.
Wow.
So you shouldn't be like your father. You should be nicer. They told you you're not as powerful. And he screwed up. Anyway, go on.
Wow.
I love Nach. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, sorry.
So
Tangents.
my message from all this, and if I can say one message to the world, I'll tell it to the camera. You know, especially with my journey through drugs, I was trying to be superhuman. I didn't like the fact that I was human. Right? I thought that since I'm broken, it's because I'm human, so I have to be beyond human. So I was taking drugs that made me feel way beyond human. I was perfect. I feel amazing. I feel like God, you know? So don't try to be superhuman. Just be super you, man.
I love it.
I told you, I like play with words, man.
Boom.
That's it. Be super you.
You, man.
Just be you.
And woman.
Yeah. That too.
And if it's be super you, man. Whoa, man. Oh, sorry, man.
Yeah,
I'm trying
so
to make the woman thing work. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so the identity thing. You want to go back to that?
Yeah, so okay, so let's say, so now you went through this experience. I'm doing this in the context of your life, but
okay.
Because the fascinating thing is I met you. This is where I meet you. I meet you at the end. Not the end. You're right in the beginning, but
I'm just getting started.
I mean, right. I'm meeting you at the, you had gone through it. You had gone through healing. You're still in healing. You've been helping other people, which I think is like the next level. And you've gone even more in adventures of healing and like to places that people don't even have to go. Like you're really seeking more. So that's where I come into the picture. And I will say one point about that is that all the people that I know that I'm like admire, they all went through hell. Like they all went through hell. This is a fascinating thing that Joe Rogan's always saying. Speaking of Joe Rogan and the cigars, but he's saying that like all his best friends are people that went through really tough experiences, and then they all try to raise their kids perfectly so that they have no tough experiences. He's like, we're creating kids that we wouldn't hang out with. You know what I'm saying? Like you need adversity to make you awesome. So I'm meeting you at the end, and so at some point you got like turned on. Like, why would you get turned on to like the healing adventure? What was that made? What made the switch? Was it the Simba name? What was the switch that you just, maybe it's not one switch, but like what made you want to get help, and what made you help, and then what made you go further? Those are the questions.
Okay. So the Simba name didn't do it quite like I thought it would. I was reinventing myself. I get to Israel, and it's new me, right? But new me still likes drugs. Right. And new me still has a belief that he's broken. Right. And that he's bad. Right. So I'm still acting on those beliefs and on that identity, just under a new alias.
Right.
Okay? Eventually, like most people who are using drugs to self-medicate, the ones that you're using stop working the way they used to, so you need to go to something more intense, something stronger, harder, right? So I was experimenting with all different types of stuff. I'll try this, I'll try that. Eventually, I tried something called LSD. And that was one of the most pivotal moments in my life, because LSD blew my mind open to a whole new experience of myself. That's a very important point, because it's not like I saw amazing visuals. Yeah, I got that too. It's not like,
LSD for the regular people is a psychedelic.
Correct.
I don't know if you want to say more about it, but I'm just giving.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, LSD stands for lysergic diethyltryptamine.
Well, that sounds right, but I don't remember.
Yeah. But whatever the case is, it's a very strong psychedelic. It became popular in the 60s and 70s in the hippie movement. What's his name?
Dennis Leary?
Yeah, Timothy Leary.
Why
Timothy Leary. You're probably thinking of
Dennis Leary
Terrence McKenna.
No, Dennis Leary is a actor.
Okay.
Timothy Leary, I meant.
Yeah, so Timothy Leary brought LSD to I think to America. It hit the scene hard. The Grateful Dead was a very powerful and popular band in the time, and they were big on LSD, and everyone at their shows were doing LSD. And it became this big like boom in consciousness of an understanding of life that's deeper and more unified. So I had that experience on LSD. But more importantly, I had an experience of myself, and I'll remember this for the rest of my life, this experience like it was yesterday. Climbing Masada. I was in Neve in Israel. And
You climbed Masada on acid?
absolutely.
Holy
Oh, dude, I've done many things on
Okay,
acid that
keep
people would
going.
not even fathom what it was like.
All right, that's
I'll tell you
amazing.
about it if you want, but
All
I
right.
climbed Masada on acid at sunrise.
Okay.
One of the most beautiful experiences ever.
Love it.
As the sun's coming up, I'm reaching the peak of the mountain. Yeah, right over there, you're getting burnt.
We're hitting the top of the mountain, baby.
Top of the mountain, I'm peaking on acid as I reach the peak of Masada. I stand up on top of the wall, and I literally felt like the king of the universe. And I remember a very strong feeling of I am awesome. That's the feeling I had. And every ounce of my being felt that. I am awesome. And I'll never forget that feeling because I'm always constantly still chasing that feeling. And chasing might have a negative connotation to it, but I think that's a beautiful thing to pursue. Because the truth is I am awesome. So pursuing that awareness and knowledge that I'm awesome is truth.
Right.
So I'm pursuing truth at the end of the day.
But the LSD let you see that.
The LSD showed me that right in my face, and especially because of the contrast, because of the dark place that I was in, feeling like I'm broken and bad. All of a sudden, I feel like I'm awesome, and I'm a great guy, and I'm like, wow, this is what I've been looking for. This is it. This is what I need. So of course, like a very good addict, I said, okay, I just need to trip acid every day.
Yeah.
And that's basically what I did for the next 6 years.
That's good logic, bro.
Yeah. I was like, this is doing it.
6 years of that?
6 years straight, I was tripping all the time.
Wow.
Yeah. I would say for a better part of 5 years. Like for that first year, I was kind of just taking it slow. I was like, okay, this is great, but you're not supposed to do it so often, and I can't get it. Eventually, I got into the scene. I joined a Grateful Dead cover band. So we were playing Grateful Dead music in a Grateful Dead crowd where a lot of people
were
had
in the
access.
band?
I was in the band. I was the drummer.
What was the name of the band?
Jerry's Kids.
Oh, I love it.
Jerry Garcia is the lead singer and guitar player in the band.
Could
So
I
we
just
were
tell
Jerry's
you my
Kids.
favorite name for a Grateful Dead cover band that I saw once called Jerry's Missing Finger. I love the name.
That's a great name because he had a missing finger.
Yeah, he had a missing finger.
Half of it, at least.
Yeah.
I was actually in another cover band called
Yeah.
The Grateful Souls.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, and that had like a Jewish spin on it.
And you were jam band?
Yeah,
Okay.
jam band, but we're playing covers of their songs
Cover,
and then
okay.
jamming on them.
Gotcha.
So I got deep into acid, which is another name for LSD.
Mhm.
And that led me to all sorts of crazy experiences. I mean, I ended up in desert parties. I ended up on like in a nudist colony on the Dead Sea. I ended up in my apartment in Jerusalem, having like travelers from all over Israel come to my apartment to get acid and trip acid together. We had dogs and people bringing in their pets to our apartment. 7 people sleeping on a bed. I mean, it was quite a journey.
Right.
And I kind of let acid guide me for many years. And the reason why I let it guide me is because it showed me that I'm awesome. And I needed that. I that's what I wanted to feel all the time. Now,
Right.
it also made me feel beyond human, which is why what I was telling you about before, which is why it wasn't good for me ultimately. And
Yeah,
because
that was my follow-up question, but I'm waiting for you to get to it.
yeah,
Sounds great.
yeah, it sounds great. Well, my brain and body were deteriorating at the same time too. Plus, the bad thing about acid having such a great come up is that it also has a come down.
Right.
And most people don't. Most people that I was friendly with didn't really mind the come down. For me, it was terrible because I had this crazy up where I feel awesome, And then on the way down, as it's leaving my system, all the parts of me that feel like I'm not awesome come rushing in at once. And I would have this really intense experience of everything that's wrong with me all hitting me at once. So I didn't like that at all. So what did I do? Like a good addict, I used pills to come down. So as soon as I started feeling the drug wearing off, I would take some pills and that would soften it and I would go to sleep.
Right.
That was my process. And that became my lifestyle for a good 5 years. And everything I did was in order to be able to experience that. And
It sounds like you're managing your emotions very carefully,
absolutely.
like a chemist.
Like a chemist. I used to actually call myself, and someone told me that I'm basically a walking pharmacy, because I had all the dials, all the levers.
Right.
I had a pill for it or a drug for it. The bad part, another bad part of it was the money aspect, getting enough money to support the habit. Eventually I had to sell. So I was dealing in Israel, risking getting arrested, putting myself in dangerous situations to get enough money to support my habit.
Right. Well, let me ask you a question. If you had unlimited money, would it have been something? I mean, that is a motivation to cut it out, but
Yeah, if I had unlimited money, I would have done way more than I did.
you just would have kept going.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But also, it reached an end when I started using opiates to come down, because the other pills I was using were kind of not working as well anymore. So of course, you go to something harder, and I started smoking fentanyl, which is
what's killing everybody.
which
folks.
is what is people are dropping like flies off of this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, they're shooting it. Most people. I was smoking it in Israel, and
Little better.
a little better.
Not much.
Yeah, it's more powerful than heroin.
Yeah.
And it's a very, very dark drug. Like it eats a person from the inside, both spiritually and emotionally and physically. And I felt all that happening at the same time. And
So let me stop you for a second, because this goes into my, when we talk about the philosophy of our village and all that stuff. The question I had for a long time, which I think I must have told you at some point, but maybe not. But the question I had, and it sounded like a silly question, is that why doesn't drugs work? Like, you do feel better, and if you manage it correctly, you could feel better pretty consistently for a pretty long time.
yeah,
And it goes back to your other answer. I'm not going to go into all the details of our thought, but our village believes that an addict is not an idiot. They're seeking what they need. And what you needed was a change of identity from I am broken to I am awesome.
correct.
But the problem is the drugs were just giving you the feeling of awesome, and you weren't changing your core belief.
That's correct.
So when we do our work with the guys, it's about convincing them that their core belief could be changed.
That's correct.
And they could be changing that. So it's just amazing when you're saying your story. It's like I'm almost rooting for the acid to work. I'm like, yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
Let him work. He has friends. He has this. He has this. All it's all working. But then it always comes back to the crash of like the change did not happen. It just felt like it happened. And then you'll keep doing that feeling forever until. So that's.
Yeah. And at some
like
point,
I
I noticed that. I noticed, like, as awesome as I feel, every time I always come back to I'm bad and I'm broken. So I actually had a plan where I'm going to do a 30 days straight of acid. I'm going to trip 30 days straight, and I'm going to trip myself into a new identity.
Right.
It didn't work.
You'll reset.
Yeah, I was like, if anything could do it, it's this. Because I would take a day or two break in between trips, because otherwise it stops working. It's much weaker consecutive days after each other. So I would take small breaks. But for this one, I was going to do a microdose, which for me was like a half a tab, which is not a microdose.
No, not.
But yeah, but for me, a half a tab was a microdose, and I was going to do a half a tab every day for 30 days, and that's exactly what I did. And after 30 days, I took a break, and I'm right back to I'm broken and I'm bad. So I was like,
It's wild.
darn it. It does
It's
not work.
interesting because there's a whole new psychedelic revolution going on, which you're familiar with and interestingly, I've gotten trapped in the category of someone who's willing to discuss ayahuasca and ibogaine and the other stuff like that are out there, and I still am. But the downside is that people think that it actually changes you. It does have the ability to let you know there's something out there. It's the top of the mountain. It's like, oh, there's God. There's more. I am special. That's something to pursue. But if you start thinking, people get addicted to the feeling of I'm special, and then when they come down, they're like, I don't feel it anymore. So instead of now going into okay, let's do the work to get back to the mountain. So my muscle, I've got a muscle. So the muscle is, Har Sinai. You go to Har Sinai, you're talking to God, you're at the highest level. I mean, talk about an acid trip. I mean, that was the highest of the highest, right? You're there talking to God, and then 40 days later, they're serving an idol.
Boom.
Like, you missed it? Like, what happened? You need the 40 years of the desert to do the work. Then you could go in and have an actual relationship with God in the Holy Land. Like, that's the highest level, is because you made it there. But I do love the idea. So when I tell people, like, oh, I like the idea of ayahuasca, I like the idea because people won't believe that they're awesome till they see it for a minute. Like in the 12 steps, you talk about spiritual experience. You get to see the top of the mountain. Like, oh, I am awesome. I saw it for a minute. I know it's true. If someone never experienced that, they don't even know what to chase. So like that's kind of like, I'm loving that you're saying this story. It's very powerful. But I just want to make that statement about ayahuasca, that like I see it as a tool, and people start worshiping the tool.
Yes.
And people start getting like all angry about the tool, and there's like, oh, this is what makes people addicted, and that's not the problem. The problem is you, and if you get that special experience that you get to see God, take it, maybe, if it's right for you, and then do the work. So that's like, I get into a lot of fights with people in the 12 steps and stuff like that. They're like, you do not touch that stuff, and I get it. I get it. And there are people that are fragile, psychological, that they could maybe go into some form of psychosis, which is really not great. But I do want to make that statement. Like, I feel like I have to make that statement, like, because I think for myself, and I've had some experiences with psychedelics, it did radically change my life, but not because it did any work for me. It just showed me who I could possibly be. And then, the possible you.
The possible you. And
the Yom Tov Glazer.
Yeah. And that really is a powerful thing. I think it's really important for people to see the possibilities. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, and I've had many experiences with many different psychedelics. And they all, acid did it the best for me, but
do you want
they all kind of have, no, I'm good.
It's too much.
I'm good, yeah.
Go on.
But it all comes back to that awareness, that glimpse. I call it a glimpse. Psychedelics give you a glimpse of what you could feel like, or how you could see yourself and the world. In the muscle that I was talking about with the lens and the projector, psychedelics can put a temporary film over the screen, but the light is still the same. If your light bulb is black, as soon as that screen comes away, everything's going to be black again. It's a temporary screen over the over the lens.
I'm having a hard time with that muscle now, because I don't think the light ever goes black.
No, you're right. It's it's the glass.
It's the glass.
The light
black.
is your soul is always, but the glass
it's like
is
a quick
black.
clean of the glass. Bro.
Yeah, something like that. Or it's a quick switch of the glass.
Right.
But you can't permanently switch that glass with psychedelics.
Right.
It's a temporary switch. Yeah, that's the muscle right there. So, the key is to
it's interesting.
clean the glass.
I have a mechanic, and my daughter has a car that the headlight was getting fogged over inside, whatever, and he said there's a trick, and you spray WD-40 on it and you wipe it down, and it's totally clear for like an hour. and then it's back. And I don't know why it works, but like it doesn't help anything. He's like, you can do this. I'm like, why would I want to do that? I have to fix this. So that's where we're at.
Yeah,
That's
and
a cool muscle.
it's great. And that's what I love about what we're doing at our village, because we are basically loving people. And by the way, I just recently discovered how to love someone properly. And basically, it's just to show someone that you're proud of them, that you enjoy who they are. Right? That's real love. Like what we're talking about, the healing love that a person needs in recovery is to finally start to see, oh, I'm good. I'm awesome. Look, this person loves me for what I do. I'm awesome. Maybe I could start seeing myself as good rather than bad or broken.
Yeah.
You know, we love people into loving themselves.
Into changing their mind about themselves.
Changing the lens.
Yeah.
Changing the lens. And the crazy thing about this lens and identity is that only a person can change their own identity. I don't believe anyone else can change your identity other than you. You can have inspiration or outside stimulus that will get you to create that change internally,
Right.
but you got to take the change. And that's the only way it's ever going to happen. And a person needs to be ready for that. And I was actually talking to one of the guys last night about this. And we went through this whole process of understanding what happened to him, what his core belief became, what his identity is, and how that's showing up in his life. And then my final question was to him, are you ready to change your identity, to change your lens? And he said, I don't think so. And I said, okay.
Yeah.
I love you for who you are right now, and I'll love you when you change your lens just the same.
So it's interesting because that's one of the beauties that I see with all you guys that are working with the guys, and it's definitely something I worked on a lot, is that very often when someone says no to that question, maybe it wasn't asked exactly like that, but basically, are you ready to change? Like there's that line, you bring a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. I think it's BS. I mean, to say it another word, yes, you can't make someone drink, but you can keep offering him water. I'm saying, like, it's a lot of people are like, well, when you're ready to change, let me know, and then I'll come back and do the change with you. No. That's the big message of our village, which is we're the village. I mean, you're not responsible for this change. Your people are. Your community is supposed to hold you when you're broken. So you're not responsible for that. That's freaking gorgeous. I mean, like, you do it. You're good. Like we always use that Shiva example, like you're broken now. They don't leave you like, oh, listen, when you want to get better from this mourning of your mother that died, like, let us know, and then we'll be there. No. When somebody is not able to drink, you keep bringing water.
Yeah.
One day he's gonna like that water.
Yeah, and that's basically what I was telling him at the end, is that I
Same
love you.
thing.
I love you. I love you anyways. It's not like, oh, let me know when you're ready to change and then I'll love you. Mm-hmm. It's like, I love you for who you are. But also that question was pointing to, like, you could change at any point. It's just a matter of being ready. And I don't necessarily know how to force someone to be ready. I don't even know how I've got myself to be ready. That's the miracle.
How did that happen for you?
Well, eventually I got into a fight with my roommate, who was the owner of the apartment. So I got kicked out of the apartment, and I was homeless in Israel for a while. And I was addicted to this fentanyl stuff. And I was in such a dark place, I didn't even want to trip acid anymore. I didn't even want to see that I'm awesome. You know what I mean? I was just like, I'm so broken and bad. Like, I don't even care to see myself as awesome. Like, that's rock bottom for me.
Yeah.
And I went to the kotel to pray for my life, because I knew that this is the end. Like, if this is the end of the line on this path. So I prayed to God to show me another path and to get me out of this. And it was on that same day, on the way out of the old city, I bumped into Rebbe Fisher, who at the time had a program in the old city, which was for guys who are struggling with addiction. And I told him that I'm struggling, and a couple weeks later I was in that program, and that was the first time I got clean.
Really?
Yeah. And I got introduced to the 12 steps in that program, and I got introduced to people who are in recovery. And I had a year clean in that program. And then COVID hit, the program shut, I relapsed. And then eventually, 4 months later, I ended up back in Fishers. And I had a drug counselor who plugged me into NA. I started actually working the 12 steps because before I wasn't doing the steps. I just heard about them. I was learning about them. I actually started working a 12-step program, and I remember I made a commitment to myself at that time. I was like, okay, now I'm going clean for real. I'm making a decision. This is going to be it. I'm never going to do drugs again. But I'm making a commitment to myself that I will discover how to feel like I'm awesome in a healthy way. That was my pursuit. That's the only thing I care about.
You embrace the desert.
That's it.
That's what
I'm going into the desert head first, and I'm not leaving until I know that I'm awesome.
Okay, couple of questions. This is fun. I really like it because I never really got to sit down and hear your whole story, kind of. You were in Fishers for a year, and then you came out and you relapsed. Like, what was that about? Like, what? You know, people are constantly struggling with this idea. I'm going to go to rehab, and I'm going to fall. And even this is a fascinating thing. Wealthy people who love to help people have told me many times, "I'm not paying for people's rehabs. I've watched it 1,000 times. They go into rehab, they come out, they relapse. I'm not doing it. You want me to help them when they're healthy again? I can do that, but I can't go through this process." So, what would you say the process was like when it closed down, COVID hit, you start using again? What was that about from your own
So there was a few
perspective?
mistakes that I made that it's clear to see now, but at the time didn't seem like a big deal. But first of all, the thing really holding me together in that program, right? I wasn't doing 12 steps, I wasn't going to meetings, but I had a community. I had a strong group of guys. At that time in the old city, it was like 12 guys in the program. So very tight-knit, intimate group. We did morning check-ins every day with a therapist. So there was that kind of sharing circle vibe that we get at meetings. And that was it. Like that, I needed that support. I barely ever left the old city. There was other guys in the program that went out and they partied. You know, they didn't really follow the thing. I was like, this is my last chance, you know, coming off of fentanyl. Like, I'm going to do whatever they tell me to do. And I'm going to go all into the program. So I was going to therapy like a few times a week. I was going to these morning check-ins and I was showing up for all the stuff.
Did you actually start feeling awesome?
I
Like,
did.
for real.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
there was one specific moment in therapy where I got to this core belief, and it was a huge revelation for me. I realized I believe I'm bad. I identify as a bad person. Even a couple months into being clean and not doing any drugs or selling drugs or anything, I still believed I was a bad guy. In that therapy session, we went back to the origin of that belief where it started. I cried my eyes out during that session, and I left that session starting to heal that part of me that believed that I was bad, and I started to rewrite the story that I'm good. But it didn't end there, but that was the beginning of my new identity.
Right.
But when COVID hit, it was a huge hit for everyone. Nobody knew what to do. A bunch of people flew back to America. A couple people, including myself, were just in Israel, just stranded. The program had to shut, and there was nowhere else to go. So I was kind of just free floating. Eventually, someone called me from Neve. The dorm counselor in Neve called me, and he said, listen, we have a bunch of guys that are still in Israel. They can't stay in what's the place where Neve is?
In Telstone.
Telstone. They can't stay in Telstone because the government doesn't let. We're getting them an Airbnb on a moshav, and he's like, I want you to come help me out. I heard you're doing well, you're clean. Come help me out with the guys. So I went to go help him out. Now, this was around Pesach time, right? Corona Pesach. A lot of wine was around the house. I mean, guys were smoking, guys were probably doing acid also, but I wasn't going anywhere near that. But the wine and the alcohol, I was like, my problem's not alcohol.
Right.
You know, I'm a drugs guy, so like I could drink. And I slowly started to drink more and more. I took a bottle to my room. I was drinking at night, you know, by myself. Got wasted by the Seder. And in my mind, I wasn't doing anything wrong. So that was the second mistake.
What were you doing wrong? Sorry. I'm just going to act like
Yeah.
a dummy here.
I was using a drug. Alcohol is a drug.
Right.
And I was addicted to drugs. In order to abstain from drugs, you can't be taking any drugs. That's the first requirement.
Right.
Of being
okay,
clean.
so interestingly, I would say, I'm just going to add that the problem is chasing a fake awesome. You
Okay.
know? So it doesn't matter what you're doing it with.
Yeah.
You call it a drug, call it,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter. I'm just
Also,
adding that.
coming from an NA background and 12-step background, we talk about the disease of addiction, right? This dis-ease and this kind of, it's like a monster inside of us that feeds on drugs. So anytime you feed it, it gets stronger and bigger, and it'll eventually consume all of you. So that's how I also see what was happening, was that I was feeding my addiction with denying that I was. Right? I was drinking alcohol, but I was telling myself I'm still clean. And eventually, I ended up, after Corona, it wasn't the end of COVID, but it was the end of my stay with Neve. I moved into an apartment with a friend in Jerusalem, and he was actually still smoking weed in the other room. And I was like, I'm fine. I could be in my room. He'll be in his room. I don't do drugs. I only drink. He smokes. He'll be over there. That was my third mistake. Right? The first mistake was losing a network. Second mistake was using alcohol and believing it wasn't a drug. The third mistake was moving into an apartment with someone who's smoking weed.
Yeah.
And it wasn't long before, actually, on my almost exactly my year anniversary of being clean, I was like, what better way to celebrate than to do drugs? Like a good addict, right?
Yeah.
And really what happened in my mind was that I believed I was good. I was like, I did this for a year. I'm clean. I'm doing better. I started working out. I'm healthy. I could do drugs now. And so I went on Rosh Hashanah. I went to Meron.
Right.
No one was able to make it to Uman, so a lot of people went to Meron. And I did acid there again. And that started the whole cycle again. And in the NA language, like, it woke up my disease of addiction. And then my disease was just like, oh, we got to do this again and again and again. Right? Because I actually had a very spiritual experience on that Rosh Hashanah. And part of it was I am awesome, right? Getting back to that feeling.
Right.
But that led me right back to where I started very quickly, even quicker than the first time. The first time it took me years to get to like rock bottom. After 3-4 months of doing drugs again, I was right back to the bottom, desperate for pills, heavy opiates and stuff like that. And so I reached out to Rav Fisher again, and I was like, I'm back where I started. Like, I lost the old city. I lost everything I worked for. And he's like, all right, I'm going to help you out. You can come to the Moshav. I'm going to get you a drug counselor, and you got to really do what he says. You got to really work with him. And that's exactly what I did. And with this new commitment to myself of discovering my awesome self, that's how I got into all the healing modalities that I'm into now. That's how I got into yoga. I got into meditation. I got into health, food. I got into fitness even more at that point. I started studying craniosacral, and that led me into this whole world of holistic health and spiritual sacred spaces.
Wow. It's interesting because a lot of times I see people doing all this work and all these things you're doing, and I think that is not how someone who loves them. That is how someone who loves themselves treats themselves. Meaning, the fact that you were doing all that stuff seems to me to be an indicator that you think you're awesome. Like, okay, what does an awesome person do for themselves? Because if you're not awesome, what am I trying to change?
Mm-hmm.
I want to change the thought. But now you're in the place where you're like, oh, I want to take care of who I am and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Freaking love that.
Yeah, and now I'm in the place of actually creating these spaces and for other people to experience as well.
Yeah, so how's the experience been on the other side?
Other side. On the health side.
No, you're the healer. I mean, like, you're not the healer, but like you're the how would I say it? You're the messenger of healing.
Vessel.
The vessel of healing. Like you've went from, needing someone to help you with the healing, and now you're on the other side, which is the 12 steps is the 12th step, and the giving back, I call it the third step, but different story. But So
Cool.
12 steps also calls it. But the giving back, how has it been to dealing with other people?
It's been absolutely beautiful. I mean, think about in the mushel, right? With the lens and the light and everything. My light was always there. I just needed to uncover the lens. Now the lens is uncovered. I still got work to do, but it's mostly uncovered. I see my light. I believe I'm awesome. I really am awesome. And I can't help but shine my light on other people. It's just what I do. As a person who is good, I shine my goodness on other people. So it's almost like I don't even have to try. I just naturally, when I see someone who is in a dark place, my light shines on them. And you going back to what you said about Joe Rogan and people, the greatest people always are people that went through hell and the greatest darkness. I believe it's because in the darkness, the light is the most visible, which means that people who go through a really dark time, they're forced, in order to survive, they're forced to seek out any light possible. And usually, the only light a person in that situation can find is the light of their own soul. And it's usually just a little tiny star in the vast darkness of the sky. But they follow that light to the source, and they realize the source of that light is their own soul and ultimately God. And then they start to connect with that more and more and more. And these are people who are very connected to their own personal light because they've been in the darkness. So, same situation for me. And I personally love to experience my own light as much as possible. And I find that I experience my light in the darkest places as well. So when I go in to help other people who are in very dark places, first of all, I get to experience their light, which is always a beautiful thing. And I get to experience my own light, which is always nice as well. So more nights than not, when I go to sleep after a day of working in our village, I feel my soul. I feel fulfilled. I feel like I just did God's work in this universe, and I'm doing what I'm here to do.
Wow. The way you say it, it's like there's such an imagery like of lights bonding,
Yeah.
You're like handing your light and you're like, that's, shoot, the movie, the Avatar.
Oh, when they connect with the
like they connect with the animal.
Yeah, that's a cool scene.
Or whatever the animal is or whatever. And then it's like poof, with like power, just now like everything could happen because
yeah.
I don't know
and
who
really
came up with that, but I love it.
Yeah, and really what's happening is that when I shine my light on someone else, it reminds them that they have a light of their own. Sometimes they can't see their own light because they're in such darkness, but then when they see someone else's light, and maybe that's what was happening when I was seeing Rabbi Kalish back when I was in the darkness, it was kind of like, oh, here's a person who's connected to their light. It almost reminded me that I also have a light.
Right.
And at the time, I wasn't ready to fully see that, but it always stayed with me.
Right.
Rabbi Kalish is one of the people that always stay with me. Wherever I go, I'll always remember him. His energy comes to me a lot. He guides me. For real.
He's the candle in the window.
Sure.
It's from a song.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
I'm like, we're getting all poetic about the Rav right now.
Yeah, it's from a song.
Yeah, but he's been that person for me in my life, and Rabbi Fisher is also one of them.
Wow.
Like these are people that
you got the superstars, man.
Yeah, I do.
I haven't got Ray Fisher on yet, but it's coming. He's my first cousin.
That's awesome.
I don't know if you know that. No.
But yeah, I'm very.
Well, there's a line that I heard early on in my career that I loved and I've always hung on to, which is called borrowing hope. Like when someone has no hope and then someone shows up and has hope in them,
yeah,
they could kind of like hop on it. So you're like, I know that you have no hope in yourself, but if you want, you could share some of mine. I have hope. I have a beautiful thing that I could tell people, which is really nice. I think it's beautiful, and I keep saying it, so I hope it's actually beautiful. But this beautiful thing is that the reason I believe you could be better is because I've seen thousands of people like you get better. Like for me, it's a miracle, but it keeps working. So I know it could work. And if someone looks at me and says, "Oh, well, if he saw it 1,000 times or 10,000 times or whatever times, maybe it's true. Maybe it's true even about me." I don't know. I don't
Nice.
know.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of speaking from experience. Also, I find that a lot of people that have gone through things similar to me also believe that we're different. So yeah, it worked for all of them, but I'm different, so it's not going to work for me.
Right.
You know, and again, that comes down to the identity of I'm different, right?
I'm different. Which is another way of saying is I'm really bad.
Exactly. I'm much badder than everyone else.
They're bad, but I'm really bad.
I'm really bad. Exactly. I'm
really
different. I'm another level of bad.
Yeah.
And again, it's a person needs to be ready. I don't know the recipe yet, but I like what you said about the village of everyone chipping in to kind of, put this person at least in a position where they're ready to make that switch. And it's really, like Ellie always says, I'm already better, right? We're already better. It's because your light is always a light.
Right.
It's
That
never
light's
changing.
light.
You're already better,
Right.
meaning all you need to do is change the lens. Unfortunately, though, a person who's looking through the lens of I'm bad, even if they see the light at the end of the tunnel, it's through the lens of I'm bad.
Right.
So even if I get the light at the end of the tunnel, it's going to be bad for me because I'm bad. So it's very hard. It's very hard. It needs to come from a place within a person. In NA, we call it a miracle because it really it is a miracle.
Yeah.
A person all of a sudden decides, okay, now I'm ready to switch the lens. And it's like that. It really happens that quickly.
Well, think about it. How many people in this world who have not gone through hell actually switch the lens? You could go your entire life with the same schemas, the same belief, who you deeply are, and because it's not that bad,
Exactly.
they'll do this. I heard this example of somebody was saying it interestingly recently. I saw it on a clip, and it was, I forgot what it was called, it some form of paradox. I forgot what it was called. But it was basically like if you have to go a mile, then you walk. If you have to go 2 miles, then you're going to drive because now it's too long to walk. So technically, it's easier to go you'll get 2 miles faster than you'll get a mile. And the idea of that is, it's an interesting, allegory too. When it's harder, we actually change more. Like when life is bearable, we're struggling, but it's bearable. We'll just walk, but we're not getting anywhere. But when it gets real hard, we're like, I gotta move. Like I have to make that move, and addicts have to. I mean, this is one of the beauties that I've always worked with teens or addicts, and those are two people that I've found that are radically changing, whether we like it or not. And it's just, to me, to bask in that awesome change. I'm basking in miracles all the time. So I could have a horrible day, and then we come down tonight is Wednesday night meeting, and I sit there and I'm like, oh, wow, I had a rough day and this and that. I sit down and everybody starts sharing, and I'm like, I saw every one of these guys when they came in here, and they do not see themselves the same way they saw themselves when they came in. And usually the first month, 2 months, the guys are literally harassing me. This is not working. This is not working. How much you get that from the guys? This is really not working. It's I don't know what kind of stupid idea you have, but it ain't working. And then you see him a year later or 6 months later, and you're like, this guy doesn't look at himself the same.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely beautiful. Anyway, this is how I feel often at the end of podcasts, because I just want to talk forever and ever. But I unfortunately looked at my watch and realized what time it was. So I'm going to ask you the question that I ask everybody, which is, and you kind of did it a little before, but now I'm going to make you do it again.
Okay.
Which is the rooftop question. If you're on top of a rooftop, yelling to the world something, like a message. Let's say this goes out to 100 million people. What do you want them to know? What's your rooftop yell?
My rooftop yell is, don't try to be superhuman. Just be super you, man. Just be you. I believe that's the purpose of life. You were created as you, right? What bigger purpose can there be to be yourself? And that includes all of the darkness as well. Embrace the darkness, because the darkness will lead you to your light.
And you said before, the darker it is, the more you seek out the light.
Yeah, and the clearer you could see where the light is. And it's also good to be around light. You know, if you're in a dark place, you don't necessarily have to find your light on your own. Go to places of light, and that's why I create sacred spaces. You know,
Tell me about the sacred spaces.
So I have a brand called Magen Movement, and we are basically a movement where we're actually catching the wave of a movement that's already happening in our community, in the Jewish community, which is these healing modalities that people are getting into. Meditation, breath work, you know, yoga, all these things that people are exploring. Why are people exploring these things? It's because there's healing to be done, and in these spaces, people are able to connect with their own light more, because it's a room filled with light. We fill the room with light, both literally, like our events are very creative in the way that me and my partner David, it's our personal David Gross.
We give him a shout out because
Yes.
he did the lighting for this podcast.
There we go, talking about light.
Booyah! If
Yeah.
you guys see the back of this TV is all lit up. That's
Yeah,
because
and
of
he's
David.
an incredible person and a
Spreads
very
light, man.
very bright soul. And it's an honor working with him. And we create these spaces that the sole purpose of our events is to create a space where a person could be surrounded by a light, where they start to see their own light. And actually, that's a good barometer for someone to gauge where they're holding in terms of their own light, is that when you start to express yourself creatively, your light is shining. You know, if a person's doesn't feel free to express themselves and be creative in life, and being creative doesn't necessarily have to mean art. Creativity comes out in the way that you dress, in the way that you speak. Everything a person does is a creative act. When a person starts to express themselves openly and freely, that means they're connecting with their light, and they feel that they're so good enough to start to spread that around. And that's where I'm at, thank the one. And thanks to David also, we're on his personal journey that he's come to a place where he could spread light. And that's what we do with our events. And we say, align with the divine and let your light shine.
I don't know how to continue with that, but I can say you're doing it. You're working our village too. Thanks for coming on. You're awesome.
Thanks, man.
And it was really fun sitting down and talking to you and having the first cigar podcast ever.
So glad to be the first one. And it was really nice talking to you too, Sonny. I got to know a little bit more about you, and now you hear about my journey. And if there's anything that you heard that can be more useful for the work that we're doing in the village, please let me know.
Oh, I put everything up there. You're screwed now because I have all the information.
Let's go. Put me to work, man.
Love you, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonny.
Thank you for this day that I've been given. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this chance. Thank you for this chance to live anew.